play and call it work. MiniWarGaming's Faction Focus!
Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to this Genestealer Cult Faction Focus review. Just like all our other Faction Focus reviews, this is where I'm going to be talking about the Genestealer Cult and what I think about them in 8th edition. But today there's also 2 battle reports that have gone up for the Genestealer Cult. You can check one out for free and one in the MiniWarGaming Vault. The first one is Genestealer Cult versus Harlequins, and the second one is Genestealer Cult versus Astra Militarum. And it was that second one was a lot of bodies. The first one is more elite. They're both very interesting games, and they're both pretty bad slugfests. So hopefully you can enjoy that. And I would recommend going and watching those before watching the review, because I don't want to have to watch everything I say right here and worry about spoilers. And so I'm just going to talk about how the units performed, and I'm going to try not to give away who won the battle reports, but it will definitely spoil certain things that happen in the battle reports. So links to those will be in the video descriptions below, so you go ahead and check them out right now. So this first part is going to be me going over every single Genestealer Cult unit, and also the main rules for the Genestealer Cult. The second part, which will be at a link in the video description below, will be me talking tactics and list building for the Genestealer Cult. I know we've only played a few games with them, but we do have some ideas based off of how they function, and also just having played a lot of other games with other armies and seeing the similarities between the Genestealer Cult and them. So that'll all be in the MiniWarGaming Vault as well, at the link in the video description below. The Genestealer Cult are, I would say, fundamentally different than they were in 7th edition, mainly because of how Cult Ambush works and because of the disappearance of Return to the Shadows. So if you played these in 7th, remember Return to the Shadows, which let you, instead of moving, kind of go back into ongoing reserves as long as you're more than 6 inches from an enemy. That is gone. So no more popping in and out of the board, which I am sad about. Maybe they'll bring it back when they update the Genestealer Cult Codex. I don't know when that'll be though. But it is sad to see it go, because I really enjoyed how they could hop around the entire table and just pop up, grab objectives, pop away, and go somewhere else. It gave them that mobility. However, in 8th edition, mobility is not as big an issue anymore. Things move a little faster. There's a lot more psychic abilities to allow you to get going places. Transports are typically faster to getting your guys across the table. So it's not too big a deal, but it is sad. Cult Ambush has also changed fundamentally as well. Now, if you're familiar with all the different deep strike special rules where you set up a guy in reserves or in meteoric descent or in a manta in orbit, they're all the same essentially, where at the end of any movement phase, you can place the unit on the table more than 9 inches away from any enemy unit. Well, the Genestealer Cult have the Cult Ambush, where you place them into Cult Ambush Reserve. Now, you can only use Cult Ambush if your entire detachment that they are in is just Genestealer Cult, because they actually, I'll talk about this in a second, they can actually combine with Astra Militarum, they can combine with Tyranids, and so, actually they can't combine with Astra Militarum in a detachment, but they can combine with Tyranids in a detachment, which is a pretty big deal. But as soon as you do that, you lose the Cult Ambush on your Genestealer Cult infantry units. So essentially, when you put them into Cult Ambush Reserve, then when they are placed on the table, you roll a die and consult the table. Now, the nice thing before we get to the table is a character, when he's coming in from Cult Ambush Reserve, can choose another infantry unit to arrive with him. They have to arrive within 6 inches of each other, but they also roll the same result. So you get the same result for both of them. This is especially good for Primuses, because Primuses have a special rule that let you re-roll the result on Cult Ambush. Other than that, you only get one shot at it. Now, in some ways, the Cult Ambush table is better, because now a 5+ is going to be good for close combat. Even a 4 can be good for close combat, because now you can assault from coming in from reserve. There's no restriction to that. But essentially, if you roll a 1 or a 2, on a 1, your opponent picks 2 table edges. On a 2, you pick 2 table edges. In either case, you randomize which of those 2 you actually arrive on, and then you must place the unit wholly within 6 inches of that table edge and more than 9 inches away from an enemy. Now, your opponent could try to use this. There was one game that I played that if I had chosen a certain table edge, my guys would not be able to show up there and they would be destroyed, and that would obviously cause a problem right there. Now I could just choose not to have them arrive, but I don't know what roll I'm going to roll at the time. If you roll a 3, it's kind of the worst result, because you have to go more than 12 inches away from an enemy, or more than 9 inches if nobody can see you, which is very rare. Number 4 is your just normal deep strike. They have to be placed more than 9 inches away from enemy. Number 5 is interesting. You place them more than 9 inches, and you can either shoot with your ranged weapons in the movement phase, so you can still shoot them again in the shooting phase. You do count as having moved for the purposes of heavy weapons. Or you can choose to move d6 inches. So before, rolling a 5 was only good if you had good ranged weapons. Now it is good just for anybody, because if you have a close combat unit, they can be deployed 9 inches away, more than 9 inches away, and then move d6 inches. So that can get them anywhere from more than 8 inches away to more than 3 inches away. And charges then are a lot easier to do. So nothing else will help you get closer than that d6 inches, no matter what kind of rules you have. But either way, you can still charge in the charge phase, and you can still shoot in the shooting phase, no matter which one you choose to do. 6, of course, is your awesome one. You set up more than 9 inches away, and then you can move normally. A full move. It says move normally, even though it just arrived. Now I need to point out, we'll get to this, but Genestealers can advance and charge. So they get deployed 9 inches away. They have an 8-inch move, plus they can add the whole d6 and get right in your face, and they can still charge. But everybody else having 6-inch moves, that still means they're pretty much deploying a little more than 3 inches away from the enemy. So it'll just be a 3-inch charge that they need in order to get into close combat, which is pretty awesome because most of your army is going to enjoy close combat. Now this is all just infantry models. It's not going to work on your vehicles as usual. They also have the Unquestioned loyalty rule, which instead of just auto passing off wounds to nearby guys, which would have been awesome, but maybe an 8th that's a little more broken, that a character, while they're within 3 inches of any infantry unit, Genestealer Cult infantry unit, whenever they take a wound on a 4+, you just kill, you just straight out kill a model from that unit. That's important because if it's aberrants, for example, with multi-wounds, you don't just have them suffer a mortal wound, you actually kill one of the aberrants, which is pretty lethal, but for the most part you're dealing with 1 wound models, so not too big a deal. On top of that, they have Brood Brothers. Allies is interesting now in 8th edition, in that it doesn't work anything like before. Instead, you don't really talk about allies. You just, within a detachment and within an army, you have to share keywords for your factions. For the Imperium, no problem. Everybody has the Imperium faction keyword. But when it comes to the Genestealer Cult, they have the Tyrannid keyword, which means in the same detachment they can have Tyrannids, or in the same army they can have Tyrannids, but they don't have Astra Militarum anywhere. And we know that in 7th they were able to ally with Astra Militarum. Well, now you can basically bring in, you can include an Astra Militarum unit and Genestealer Cult units in the same match play, even though they don't have any faction keywords in common. However, you can only include one Astra Militarum detachment, one in which every unit has the Astra Militarum keyword. So you can't bring in Militarum Tempestus or Commissars, you know, things that have the, I think that's the Officio Perfectus or whatever. They're no longer, maybe they have Astra Militarum too. I can't say for certain, but it doesn't matter. You won't be able to bring in everything that the Astra Militarum would be able to bring. Because, which you couldn't before anyways. Militarum Tempestus was a separate book. The Imperial Agents were separate books as well. So it's kind of the same as before. And you just ignore the Astra Militarum units when choosing your army's faction. So it's just, you just become a Genestealer Cult army with Astra Militarum as a detachment. So they don't get to mix within the same detachment, but you are able to bring a detachment of Astra Militarum, which is pretty cool. Because now you don't have to worry about them not counting as friendlies. They still count as friendlies in the same army, which does matter for certain psychic powers that the Astra Militarum Psychers might have. But it's not going to matter too much for your Broodmind discipline, because none of them actually allow you to cast on friendly models. It's only on friendly Genestealer Cult infantry units. It's the only one that has that. But we do have some interesting Broodmind discipline psychic powers. First one is Mass Hypnosis, probably my favorite. It casts on a 7+. You choose an enemy within 18 inches of the Psyker, and it gets -1 to all of its hit rolls, but more importantly, it cannot fire Overwatch. And your guys are squishy. Overwatch is huge in this game, so that is kind of nice. And they also fight last in the fight phase, which when you watch the Genestealer Cult versus Harlequins one, was really, really annoying for Quirk's Harlequins. So even if they charge, they still fight last in the fight phase, which is pretty epic. Mind Control, I haven't got a chance to really use this yet because you're going to see why it can be super awesome. It's a 6+ to manifest. You pick an enemy model within 12 inches of the Psyker, just a model, and you roll 3d6. If it's equal to or greater than the leadership of that enemy, you can immediately shoot another enemy unit of your choice or make a single close combat attack against it as if it were part of your army. Picture a Baneblade. Get within 12 inches of Baneblade. It has no restrictions on what kind of thing you can choose. It just says an enemy model within 12 inches and then roll that leadership. And now all of a sudden that Baneblade is under your control and you get to shoot with it. It doesn't say only shoot one weapon. It does say only make a single close combat attack, which I'm assuming it means one close combat attack, like you roll one die, not that it just gets to make a full attack as if it's the fight phase, but it doesn't specify for shooting. So right now, unless there's an FAQ that's going to come out and correct this, you can fire all of its weapons at any enemies. And that's pretty awesome. Now, it's not going to be that great when there's just single models nearby with bolt guns and stuff, but if there's a Lehman Russ nearby, pretty much the more powerful something is, the more mind control will be really good against it. And it's only on a 6+. And then the third one is Might from Beyond, 7+ to cast. 18-inch friendly Genestealer Cult infantry gets +1 strength and attacks. It specifies Genestealer Cult, so you can't bring in Tyranids and then give them the +1 strength and attack. That would be awesome, but you can't do that. But still, that +1 strength and attack is huge. Put it on your Acolytes and they'll be strength 5 rending. And, well, I say rending, we'll have to get used to new terminology, but essentially the same thing as what rending did before. And they get an extra attack as well, which is pretty darn good. Put it on Genestealers and they'll basically kill anything, even though Genestealers will already almost kill anything. And it's just an awesome psychic power. So all 3 psychic powers are good. You're going to see in my games more Mass Hypnosis and some Might from Beyond. Those ones are the ones I found more useful in the games that I played, but Mind Control could definitely be a good ability. And now that you get to choose your abilities, that's a pretty big difference. Let's talk about the different Force Org parts of the army, starting with the HQ choices. We've got 4 of them: Patriarch, Magus, Primus, and Acolyte Icon Ward. One thing I've noticed in 8 is when building your armies, HQ units are actually a huge part of getting command points because they're pretty much a requirement in every detachment. For example, let's say you have 3 HQs and you've got a few troops and you've got 3 elites and 3 heavy support, but you want to add a 4th heavy support. Well, you just bring the Spearhead detachment, take one of the HQs from your battalion detachment, so not only have 2 HQs, you put that HQ with those heavy support in the other one, and boom, you've got a free command point, and you can bring more heavy support. In fact, if soon as you have 3 elites, or 3 fast attack, or 3 heavy support, you can take one of your HQs and go get a free command point from that. Of course, if you can get 6 troops, 3 fast, 3 elite, 3 heavy support, then you can just go up to the brigade detachment, which gives you 9 command points bonus. But still, the fact that I've noticed that it's really easy for us to get more HQ choices in an army than other ones that I've played. And on top of that, there's no more restriction to only 1 Patriarch or 1 Primus or 1 Magus per detachment. Before that wasn't restriction, it was just in the Cult Insurrection detachment that was a restriction. But that was the best detachment for them, so it kind of sucked that you can only bring 1 of each. Now they have no restriction. They're not unique. You can bring as many as you want. It's kind of weird in some cases. I did the one game with 3 Primuses. I just said they were triplets, which is why there was actually 3 of them leading the army rather than the usual 1. But it worked really well because of what the Primus can do. So let's start with the Patriarch. Patriarch is an awesome beast. He's similar to the Broodlord for the Tyranids. He has a little better abilities though, being at strength 6. He boosts all nearby Genestealer units. So Genestealer Cult, you add 1 to hit rolls in the fight phase for friendly pierce-trained Genestealer units that were within 6 inches of him. So he only gives that plus to them, whereas the Primus actually has a +1 to all hit rolls in the fight phase for any Genestealer Cult units that are within 6 inches. So the Primus actually has a better ability than the Patriarch because it affects everybody, and they do stack. Whereas before the Primus would dole out Hatred, now he just gives that +1 because Hatred would be kind of harder to deal with in this one. Also, the Patriarch does have his quasi-fearless thing. Everybody within 6 inches automatically pass morale tests. He has a 5-up invuln, which is great. And just like Genestealers and Broodlords, he can charge even if he advanced. Now we have this new thing called Familiars. We had Familiars before, but they were basically, the models didn't matter. They were just to represent the upgrade that you took, kind of like ammo rents and things like that. But now they do matter. You can allocate wounds to them. They are part of a unit, so that if the Patriarch takes Familiars, they become a unit. You're still a character unit, so you can't shoot him unless he's the closest, even if the Familiars are closest. But if there's another unit closer than the Familiars and you can't shoot at them, the Familiars are with him, and even though they're toughness 3, you still use his toughness 5 when you determine your to wound rolls. And the Primus and Magus can take them as well. I think that's a new thing for the Primus, because the Familiars weren't, I don't know if you could take them before, it's not off the top of my head, I can't remember. I never did though. And the Familiars themselves have a couple attacks, strength 4, 3s to hit, which is kind of fun. And of course with the Primus, then because they have Genestealer Cult keyword 2, they'd actually be a 2+ to hit, because you're always within your own aura. So the Patriarch is just a super awesome beast, but the Primus, I think, is my favorite because of the one ability he has, which is Meticulous Planner. When he arrives in the battlefield using the Cult Ambush ability, you can re-roll that result, and of course he can bring a unit with him just like any other character. So that's a pretty big deal because you're looking for that 5+, at least roll that 4, but a 5+ would be awesome, which does really work well for him. Other than that, he's just a close combat beast, giving that +1 to hit rolls in the fight phase for all nearby Genestealer Cult units within 6 inches, so that's pretty awesome. The Magus, of course, is our Psyker. Oh, the Patriarch is a Psyker. Basically a level 1 Psyker. He can cast 1 power, he knows 1 power plus Smite, and he can deny 1 power. There's no way to upgrade this like there was before. So Might from Beyond is great for him, Mass Hypnosis is great for him. All of them are good for him, but I'd say that it more matches his playstyle to be Might from Beyond or Mass Hypnosis. The Magus is the same thing. Now the Familiars give the Magus and Patriarch 1 extra ability that once per game they can actually manifest a 2nd power. Still can't manifest the same power, and you wouldn't be able to manifest the same power that another Psyker did in match play except for Smite, but I have found this to be very, very useful. And with the Magus, he has an interesting ability called Spiritual Leader that all Genestealer Cult units within 6 inches can actually deny a psychic power if they are the target, as if they were a Psyker. So it gives you more denying the witch abilities. I haven't seen that come into play yet because I haven't played against Psykers in any of my games. I've always been the one to bring Psykers. And of course we have the Acolyte Icon Ward in the back there. He's basically an Acolyte hybrid, with but he's got more attacks and more wounds with his Rending Claws and Blasting Charges. But his banner, basically everybody within 6 inches ignores wounds on a 6+. So yeah, that's nice, a Feel No Pain 6+. And everybody within 6 inches can reroll failed morale tests. So that's a nice boost as well. Other than that, he's just the cheapest of all of the HQ choices. So if you're looking for just a few points you need on our HQ choice, he's a good choice. I haven't really used him yet because I've always found better uses for everybody else. On to troop choices. We've got our Acolyte hybrids and Neophyte hybrids. Let's start with the Acolytes. Acolytes have, I would say, changed a lot, mainly because, well, there's no way to get their weapons for free by summoning anymore. And so you're actually going to have to buy those weapons, the heavy rock drill, saw, and cutter. The other thing that's really changed is what those weapons are good at doing. And they're kind of the main reason. You could just bring Acolytes with their Rending Claws and their knives and their pistols, and they'll be effective. And by the way, the cult icons in the Acolytes, Neophytes, and the Metamorph hybrids are free, because it just says that you can bring one. At the back of the book under points values, there's no points cost listed for cult icon. And trust me, I've looked and I've looked and I've looked, everybody else has looked, and there isn't one, which must mean it's free. I don't know why it's free, why it's not like 5 points or 10 points or something, but it just is. So basically, if you have the model, make sure you always include a cult icon, because the cult icon lets you reroll hit rolls of 1 in the fight phase, which is pretty good. It's actually quite excellent. So the Rending Claw, just so you know, the basic Rending Claw that you've seen everybody have is a strength user, -1 AP, 1 damage, but if you roll a 6+ on the wound roll, then the AP becomes -4 instead of -1, essentially ignoring everything except a 2+ save. So it's basically like how Rending worked before, except you actually still get a modifier when you hit them. Now the heavy weapons, it's funny because in 7th, the heavy rock saw was where it was at. Basically, it was an Armor Bane Power Fist, and so I have a lot of those, and I don't have a lot of drills and cutters. Well, now I want all drills and cutters, actually, because I think that they're even better. The heavy rock saw is still fine. It'll be strength 8, AP -4, and 2 damage apiece. And the really cool thing about it is none of these heavy weapons, even though in 7th they were unwieldy, and in 8th most unwieldy weapons make you get -1 to hit, none of these do. So they still get to hit on 3+, or if there's a Primus or Primus nearby, sorry, just a Primus nearby, they hit on 2+, and you give them a cult icon and they're rerolling 1s. So that's pretty awesome that they don't get that -1 to hit like all the other unwieldy weapons have got. So the rock saw is actually the most boring. The drill is super cool. Unfortunately, once you watch the battle report, you'll see that it didn't really get to show off what it could do because I failed the rolls. But essentially, it's still strength 8, -3 AP, 1 damage apiece instead of 2. But whenever each time a model suffers damage from this weapon, roll, and on a 2+, that model suffers a mortal wound. And then you get to roll again, if you made that 2+. Now it's on a 3+, they suffer another mortal wound. And you keep rolling a d6, increasing the score required to cause a mortal wound by 1 each time, until the model is slain or the roll is failed. So now, whenever the model suffers damage from this, I guess the question would be, that if that model is already gone, do you get to roll that first 2+? Or does it get to carry on throughout the unit? So it's really good at drilling through a multi-wound model, but there is going to need to be some clarification that if the model was slain, do you even get to roll that 2+? My guess is no. So it'll be really good at killing a multi-wound model. Now, to the heavy rock cutter, this is even better at killing the multi-wound models, because what it does is it's strength 8, -4 AP and 2 damage, just like the heavy rock saw. But when you damage a model other than a vehicle, you roll a die. If you roll higher than the model's remaining number of wounds, it is just slain. And you're going to see how effective that was in the, or you saw how effective that was in the Harlequins versus Genestealer Cult. Although right now, as I was talking about the Heavy Rock Drill, I realized I was doing it wrong, but it didn't matter because we didn't actually make the roll. I thought that it's just 2+, the unit suffers a mortal wound, so you could just keep drilling through the unit, but it really is only good at killing one of them. So I'd say the Heavy Rock Cutter and the Heavy Rock Saw are going to be your weapons of choice. Of course, you can you get the leader for free as well. You might as well take the leader, gives you extra leadership and extra attack, and then he has access to other stuff like the Lash Whip and Bone Sword. So pretty nasty unit, and there's regular movement 6, but with Cult Ambush, that's usually not too much of a problem. Then we have the Neophytes. Neophytes are pretty much what you'd expect. They're low toughness, low wounds, low save. They're super cheap. They have access to their auto guns and last guns and auto pistols, but they do get to equip some pretty cool gear. Being able to bring 2 Flamers. Flamers are the weapon of 8th edition, I believe, just with all their auto hits, ignoring so many of the minus hits that you can see out there. Auto hitting flyers, although they're not going to do much damage against them. But the fact that they can take 2 Flamers or 2 grenade launchers, and then they can take a heavy weapon, like missile launchers are awesome now, last cannons are awesome now, even auto cannons are awesome now, being strength 7 and 2 damage. And so other than that, these guys are pretty straightforward. They're kind of your cheap troop choice. Still have the same restrictions as before, that even if you bring them from 10 man to 20 man, it doesn't increase the number of special weapons they can carry. I'm kind of disappointed by that, but that is the way it was in 7th, so there's really no change there. Other than that, they're just what you think they are, cheap troop choice to fill out your ranks. On to elites, we have our hybrid metamorphs. Now these ones have changed both for good and for bad. They've become better because they have more attacks than the acolytes. Other than that, their stats are the same. But I don't like what they did with the metamorph weapons. The metamorph weapons aren't nearly as good. In 7th edition, basically they had their rending claws, strength 4 rending, and if you gave him a claw, the model equipped with the claw got +2 strength. So you could still use the rending claw and get that +2 strength. So essentially you could take the claw and get strength 6 rending. You could take the lash whip, which gave you a higher initiative and rending, or you could take the talon, which gave you +1 weapon skill and rending. Now, the claw gives you +2 strength, the talon gives you +1 to hit, and the whip, if you die before you get to fight, you actually still get to fight. So you just leave the model there until he has a chance to fight. But they're all AP nothing, 1 damage. And with the way it works now, you don't benefit from multiple weapons. Like if he has a rending claw and a metamorph claw, then that's not going to do anything. Although you do have to replace your rending claw even to get the metamorph claw to begin with. But assuming that you had both of them, you still have to choose to use the rending claw or the metamorph claw. So going from strength 4 with that -1 AP and the 6+ gives you AP -4, going to strength 6 but losing all AP and all damage. Most things that you'd want to raise your strength for, you're going to want to have some sort of AP against and better damage than 1. So I would like to see the metamorph claw be at least like damage 2 or maybe a -2 AP or something like that. So I'm not seeing as much a use for the metamorphs. However, with the extra attack that they're given, they do have some potential. And the fact that you have access to all your hand flamers throughout the entire acolytes and metamorphs does, if maybe that'll work out to be the new meta, just spamming hand flamers, even though they're not quite as good. They're pistol D3, only 6-inch range, so they're not nearly as good as a regular flamer, but just the fact that you can bring so many of them. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sold yet on the metamorphs because I do feel that they got a little worse, but maybe I'll be proven wrong and we'll find a good use for them. Aberrants are pretty scary. They are still the toughness 4, 2 wounds, and but they have a bestial vigor special rule that when inflicting damage on the aberrant, reduce the damage of the attack by 1 to a minimum of 1. So multi-damage weapons aren't going to be as good at taking them out. They're only 2 wounds each, so I think that'll come into play more often than you might think when you're just math hammering it out. So it's a nice rule to have. And then other than that, they're a simple 3+ to hit, which is nice and solid. And they can either have the power hammer or power pick. The power hammer is basically going to be double strength, so it'll be strength 10, which actually is a pretty big strength. -3 AP, 3 damage apiece, but they get -1 to hit, so the old unwieldy. And the power pick is just strength 5 instead of going up to strength 7 like it used to. But I guess the power hammer used to only go up to strength 8, so going up to strength 10 is a pretty big deal. So the power pick is -2 AP and only D3 damage, but it doesn't get -1 to hit. I still think I would equip with the power hammer. That -1 is fine. If I'm going to use these guys, I'll probably try to park a Primus nearby to give them +1 to hit anyways. because they're going to hit so hard. They only have a couple attacks each, and they are pretty expensive, but I think they'll be more resilient. They're only toughness 4 or 5-up save, and they no longer have their inbuilt feel no pain. So, you know, jury's out. I didn't really get a chance to play with these much, but I do think that they are going to be scary, especially if they all have hammers as they charge in. And they always have their default rending claw as well, which allows them to be able to just to switch over to that if they feel it's going to be more effective. That's only going to really be important if they have the power hammer. Like if you have a power pick and rending claw, then most likely going to want to use the power pick each time, because the profile I think will do better on average. And of course we have the scary pure strain Genestealers. These are, I'd say, they're identical. They're identical to the Genestealers and Tyranids. If there's at least 10 of them in the squad, you get 4 attacks instead of 3. They have their 5-up invuln. They can advance and charge. They can take talons, so basically scything talons, where they get to reroll 1s to hit, but that's only if they're using the talons, which have no AP. Or they can just use their rending claws. Most of the time you're going to see me running these without those talons, unless I'm up against Harlequins again, which in case I'll love to bring the talons, because who cares about rending claws against an army with just all invulns. But other than that, they're just a solid choice. 8-inch move, 3-up to hit, strength 4, rending with a nice high leadership of 9 with a 5-up invuln. Like they're not squishy. They'll die to enough firepower, but they have just been proven to be so powerful that I would pretty much always want to take them in any army. And thankfully now both the Tyranids and Genestealer Cult pretty much have the same Genestealers, rather than 7th when the Tyranid Genestealers sucked and the Genestealer Cult Genestealers were way better. So you're going to probably see me play these a lot when I'm bringing my Genestealer Cult lists. Dedicated transports, of course, have changed a lot in 8th edition, and so have the Goliath trucks and the Cult Chimeras. The Chimera just being the same as you'll see in the Astra Militarum list. But both of these, they've taken a significant increase in durability, especially the Goliath truck, which used to be super easy to kill. It was just armor value 10 all around. Now it's toughness 6, 10 wounds with a 4-up save, with rugged construction, which just ignores wounds on a 6+. That's after all your saves have been failed. They are open-topped, the trucks that is, so anybody embarked on it can just fire from it, using the same restrictions as they normally have. And it does suffer explosions if it can. And it can take the cache demolition charges, which it can only be used if there's people on board, but it's pretty powerful. But now, like the autocannon, for example, pretty much everything that was twin-linked is now just 2 of them. So it's a twin autocannon, so you're looking at 4 shots at strength 7, and autocannons are great now. So that is really nice. And it has a 4+ ballistic skill, so that is not bad at all. With 10 wounds, these things are survivable, and they have a 12-inch move right off the bat, so you can just get them right off the table. The nice thing is, too, although this is not as important as you might think, they can now transport Genestealers, whereas before they could not. Now it just says they can transport up to 10 Genestealer Cult infantry models, and Genestealers have Genestealer Cult and their infantry. It's not as big a deal, because now the Genestealers can move 8, they can advance, and they can charge, so most likely you're going to want to do that, especially setting them up in Cult Ambush Reserve. But it's nice to know at least that you have that option. And the Cult Chimera is pretty much the same as before. It's got its smoke launchers, which you probably never really care to use that, or not use that often. You can give them the multi-lasers, you can give them they have the lasgun arrays, and you can give them heavy stubbers, heavy flamers, heavy bolters, all working just the way that you'd think. And they can take 12 Genestealer Cult infantry models just like before. They're a little tougher than trucks, they're toughness 7. They got a 3-up save, so that's more your typical vehicle. But other than that, they're just what they appear to be, nothing too special here. There's only 2 fast attack choices for the Genestealer Cult. You got the Scout Sentinels and the Armor Sentinels. And I think the Scout Sentinels are going to prove to be quite effective because of how important flamers are in this. I didn't really use them in the games that I played, but the more I've played games of 8th edition, the more I've realized how great flamers are. And the fact that you have these Cult Scout Sentinels, who cares that their ballistic skill is only 4+, you give them a heavy flamer, they do D6 auto hits at strength 5 -1 AP. On top of that, they have a scout vehicle rule, which is at the start of the first battle round, but before the first turn begins, you can move this unit up to 9 inches, but it can't end within 9 inches of any enemy models. So if both players have these units, then whoever has first turn gets to do it first. They have a 9-inch move, so now the flamers are heavy, so you can't advance and fire them. If they were assault D6 like regular flamers, then you could advance that. But still, moving up 9, having that free movement of 9, and moving up 9 again with an 8-inch range heavy flamer is going to be pretty nasty. It's also Overwatch is really nasty with that. So I think these are going to prove to be quite effective. They are still pretty squishy. Toughness 5, 6 wounds, 4-up save. Won't take very long to kill them, but not as squishy as they used to be. I think they'll take a lot longer to die to regular bolter fire and regular small arms fire. And of course, they get hit by last cannons and missiles. Well, they died to those before, so it's okay that they die now. And then their Armored Sentinel variants just basically gain a 3+ save instead of 4+, but toughness and wound-wise are actually the same. So I'd say the Armored Sentinels took a bit of a hit in durability, but at the same time, they're the ones that can be equipped with the missile launchers, plasma cannons, multi-lasers, and all of that, and even heavy flamers as well. But I think if you're going to do heavy flamers, you'd want to put on the scouts, just so you get that 9-inch scout move. I don't really think it's going to matter too much to get going from a 4-up save to a 3-up. Of course, I know sometimes you're going to roll it and you're going to be like, I wish I had +1 save. But in the end, I think the scouts are going to be the choice with heavy flamers. But if you're feeling brave, bring a bunch of plasma cannons. And if you're really feeling brave, then supercharge those and hope that you don't just blow up your vehicle as it fires them. But it is pretty powerful when it does get them off. Ballistic skill 4+, so not bad at all. But these are your only fast attack choices. So if you're going for a brigade detachment, you're going to have to bring 3 units of sentinels in order to be able to pull that off. On to our heavy support. It's pretty straightforward, just 2 of them. We got the Leman Russes and the Goliath Rock Grinders. Leman Russes are identical to Astra Militarum Leman Russes, but we haven't had an Astra Militarum faction focus, so I'll talk about what they can do. So essentially the Cult Leman Russes are the Leman Russ battle tanks. They cannot take anything that the Leman Russ Demolishers can take, which means I have access to the Battle Cannon, the Eradicator Nova Cannon, the Exterminator Auto Cannon, and the Vanquisher Battle Cannon, of which it's hard to say which one's best. Battle Cannon is not bad. Gets D6 shot, strength 8 -2, D3 wounds. That, you know, if in it, I should say right now the Leman Russes have a grinding advance, that they don't get the -1 to hit for firing heavy weapons for their turret, which that Battle Cannon or the Nova Cannon or Auto Cannon or Vanquisher Cannon are. So you can move up. He's got a 10-inch move, which is a vast improvement over 7th edition Leman Russes. He can get up there and fire D6 shots. I'd say overall they are quite effective. Vanquisher Battle Cannon is great. It's 1 shot. It's basically a last cannon. 1 shot, strength 9, -3 AP, D6 damage, but you roll 2 dice when determining that damage and you discard the lowest. But it's only 1 shot, hit on a 4+, so it's not super reliable. But I still think, the Leman Russes are going to be good in this edition, but they're not going to be as good as they could be. But they are toughness 8, 12 wound, 3-up save, so they are resilient. Just got to make sure nobody charges them and ties them up, because then if they fall back, they can't fire. They don't have a rule that stops that. Now, I do say one thing though, if they do bring plasma cannons on the side sponsons and you supercharge them, they don't die if they roll the 1s, but they have the emergency plasma vents. If you roll any 1s, you take 6 mortal wounds instead out of your 12 wounds, and then you can't fire any plasma cannons for the rest of the game. Is that worth it? Well, the nice thing about plasma cannons is they only get hot. They only have that, yeah, that gets hot, I'll say, if you choose to supercharge them. Otherwise, they're still pretty solid weapons, but they're not quite as nasty as they were before for killing your own vehicles, unless you really try to push them to the limit. So Leman Russes, nice addition to the army, of course, to provide that extra heavy support that's hard to get with the rest of your army, except for your neophytes. They're about the only other thing that can provide that, except for the Goliath Rock Grinders, which we'll talk about now. The Goliath Rock Grinders are interesting in 8th edition. They are resilient. They're toughness 7, 10 wounds, only 4-up save, but they have the rugged construction, which lets them ignore wounds on a 6+, which actually happens more often than you would think. They have access to their 3 same weapons as before, the Clearance Incinerator, the Heavy Mining Laser, and the Heavy Seismic Cannon, but now they all kind of act differently. The Clearance Incinerator is a 12-inch, strength 5, assault D6 flamer that automatically hits its target, which is nice. So it can basically move its 10, it could advance, and then auto hit something within 12 inches D6 times with that strength 5 -1, which is pretty scary. Heavy Mining Laser is essentially a last cannon, strength 9, -3 AP, D6 damage, heavy 1. The Seismic Cannon, the nice thing is before you looked at how far away you were and that was the profile you chose, but now you just choose a profile. At long wave, it's 24 inches, 4 heavy shots, strength 4, -1 AP, and 2 damage. And at short wave, at 12 inches, it's 2 shots, strength 8, -2 AP, and 3 damage. That's pretty cool. The thing I was disappointed with is the Drill Dozer Blade, which it's a strength 8, -2 D3 damage attack. He's got 6 attacks base, hitting on 5s. Most vehicles only hit on 6s, so hitting on 5s is nice. And he goes in there, and if he charges, he gets an additional D3 attacks. In the game that I did it against just regular infantry. It's definitely not going to be an infantry killer. It just doesn't have enough attacks for that. But the fact that it's -2 AP and D3 damage apiece, I think these things will be super awesome at charging other vehicles and monsters. But I haven't had a chance to test that out yet. Because when it charges in, it'll have 6 to plus D3, so 7 to 9 attacks, hitting on 5s. If you have a nearby Primus, he actually gives them a +1 because he has a Genestealer Cult unit. And the Primus just says nearby Genestealer, 6 inches, Genestealer Cult units. Doesn't say Genestealer Cult infantry, just says units. They get +1, so that'll become a 4+. I think that would actually be a really neat combo to have him and the Rock Grinder nearby. The Rock Grinder charges into a vehicle, gets 7 to 9 attacks, hit on 4s, strength 8, -2 AP, D3 damage apiece. That is where I think it's going to shine with the Drill Dozer Blade. But don't really use it into infantry. It's not going to be effective against that, even though it'd be cool if it was, because it kind of looks like it should be able to mow through a big group of infantry. That's not what it actually does on the tabletop. And it can hold 6 models, and just like it could before, and it's, even though it's not open-topped, all the transports now, the guys can get out and charge, which is a pretty big deal. So I think it will be useful. Time will tell how useful it'll be for this army. There you have it. That is an overview of all the new units in the Genestealer Cult. Obviously not quite as many as I had to do in my Tyranid faction focus, which is nice. But I think that this army is going to be really interesting as an infantry-based army with some backup from the vehicles. But I think also it'll play well as a vehicle army if you really want to try that out. But we're going to talk about that in the next video. I'm going to talk about list building, some tactics that I've derived from the games that I've played, and talk about potential uses for all of them. That'll be for our Vault members at the link in the video description below. If you're not a Vault member, if you've been watching all these faction focuses and all this stuff, there's a ton of content that you are missing out on that is in the Vault. More battle reports, more reviews, more everything. And we would really love your support, because your support is what allows us to make these videos. Most of our revenue comes from the Vault, not from our YouTube advertising revenue. That just doesn't, that basically doesn't quite cover the lease of the building we're in. I always say that, but I like to emphasize that so people don't think, well, why don't you just put more videos out to try to make more money? Trust me, we're nowhere near the amount of money we would need to be able to run our operation just from YouTube advertising. So we rely on our Vault members, and we're very thankful to ones who already are. So if you want to try it out, we can actually take a free 7-day trial, get access to everything instantly. There's no restrictions during the trial at the link in the video description below. And if you don't want it, cancel. If you do want it, keep it. If you forget to cancel and you wanted to cancel, we have a full 30-day money-back guarantee. We don't want your money unless you like the Vault. So basically you have a 37-day trial, because you could forget, quote-unquote, to renew, and then 28 days into your first month, you can say, hey, I don't want this, and we'll refund you it. Hey, we'll do that because we want you to be happy. We don't want your money unless you're happy, and that's really important to us that we emphasize that we're doing our best to make you happy, that we're not going to trap you with some sort of contract and that you'll want to get out of, but it's really hard to, like your gym membership or something like that. So go check it out, help support us so we can make more of these videos, hire more people, and try to give you even more wargaming entertainment. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.